In a revealing one-on-one interview this week, I sat down with David Jolly, the former Republican congressman who is now running for Florida governor as a Democrat in 2026. We discussed his remarkable political evolution, what drove him to switch parties, and why he has chosen to enter this wide-open race to lead the Sunshine State. Jolly also shared his strategy for winning over Republican voters, a critical challenge if he hopes to secure victory in a deeply red state.
Florida is on the right track.
What is David Jolly's positions going to be?
Well, let's talk about the political evolution and the journey that you've been on. You
Sure.
transitioned from a Republican congressman to an independent, now registered Democrat. Yeah. I'm curious, what were the key moments that led you to that choice?
Yeah, I think that's a strength of our candidacy, right? Critics are quick to say, oh, he used to be a Republican. That's right, I did. I used to be a Republican. I spent 6 years as an independent. I'm now a Democrat. What I would suggest is, one, my values really haven't changed, right? That required some introspection. I think I've always fought for an economy for all people, for a government that actually works, for our seniors, our veterans, for quality public education, but fundamentally a government that lifts everybody up, that protects everybody's rights, that restores dignity regardless of where you were born, the color of your skin, who you love, who you worship. You know, I was doing that as a Republican, right? It got me in trouble. I mean, I was a Republican for marriage equality, climate science, gun control, campaign finance reform. And then what I loved about the independent space was the ability to be untethered from kind of major party requirements. Then and today, and as long as I've been around, I think I was for lower corporate taxes, but more gun violence prevention. Maybe that's right, maybe that's left, maybe that's middle. It doesn't really matter to me if it protects kids and if it allows for economic growth. But I think the fundamental democratic values are what I see, which are an economy for all people, a government that works, and a government that respects people's dignity. And so for me, it's been a natural journey to this space. But I will also say where I have changed in my positions over 10 years, that evolution is also a strength. Too many politicians will either not admit they changed or try to hide it as though it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. Most people's politics have changed. I would say to my Republican friends, you've changed a lot. You're no longer about the party of fiscal discipline or lower debt or lower deficits. You now think it's okay to be in people's classrooms and in their doctor's offices and in their bedrooms. Those weren't Republican values when I was a Republican.
Just as a practical strategic matter, though, the last guy that tried this, Charlie Crist, your colleague and former political rival, he had the same sort of similar evolution. He was a Republican, independent, Democrat, and it didn't work out too well. How would you approach it differently?
Two things. I'm not sure Charlie was honest with voters about it. You know, Charlie would say he never changed. Charlie would say, I didn't leave the party left me. That's not my story. David Jolly left the party, David Jolly's changed. I ask a different question of voters. Is it okay to change your mind in politics? I think so. But let's also be realistic. Cycles matter. And in this cycle in 2026, we are in the midst of a generational change environment. We're seeing it nationally. We're seeing in the congressional special elections in Florida, Democrats are overperforming by 15 or 16 points. But very importantly, we're also in the midst of an affordability crisis in the state of Florida. An affordability crisis that is impacting every Floridian, regardless of the community you live in, your socioeconomic status, regardless of your voter registration. The affordability crisis is hitting Republicans as hard as it's hitting independents and Democrats. And I think you can look at Republicans in Tallahassee and say, did you contribute to this? Because I think you did. And are you fixing it? Because I don't think you are.
Florida has shifted significantly to the right, as you know, with a 1 million plus voter registration advantage for Republicans. How do you plan to appeal to Republican voters whom you would definitely have to win over in order to win the governor's race in 2026?
You know what I love about being a Democrat? We get to accept math. That math is very daunting. I think, though, this is a change environment where people say, you know what? If I see a coalition that's willing to fight for a state catastrophic fund for property insurance, for true property tax reform, not just a property tax cut reform, that's willing to invest in public education, that's willing to fight crime but not fight communities, fight crime, not communities. If I see that coalition in a governor's race, maybe that's a coalition I want to be a part of. Look, we have to invest in voter registration as Democrats. We have to go places where Democrats haven't gone. I have to sit with the faith community and explain why I think our values best align with the teachings of faith. Any faith, the basics: love, kindness, charity, respect, dignity. We have to go to gun owners and say, we don't think gun owners are the problem. But if we strengthen our laws, we're going to protect your kids just like we're going to protect ours. We have to go to the ag community and say tight labor markets are because of it, DeSantis' immigration policy. But we also have to be Democrats who go into South Florida and say communism's wrong, socialism's wrong, capitalism provides the greatest opportunity, but we will be the party that makes capitalism work for everybody. Republicans won't be. Part of it is reaching those independent voters on a message maybe they haven't heard before. As an independent, I used to beg the major parties. When I was organizing, you and I talked about this, when I was organizing the independent movement, James Carville said, "You're just taking votes from Democrats." And I said, "James, independents are available to you too. We need to be a party that invites in independents and Republicans and say, be a part of this coalition."
Even if you got over the voter math hump, you would have to work with a Republican-dominated legislature. Presumably, it would still be that way if you got in. If elected governor, how would you plan to work with the Republican lawmakers to advance your agenda on issues like affordability?
Yeah, it's a great question. My wife and I had to ask ourselves two hard questions. Can we win? I know we can. And then what happens if you get there, right? You have a Republican town, a Republican legislature. Here's the realization, though. It just requires you to briefly look around the corner. If voters demand change in 26, if voters elect a Democrat, not if David Jolly gets elected, if voters demand change, then the issue is not between a Democratic governor and a Republican legislator. It's between a Republican legislature and the voters. Because then we get to say, hey, Republicans, you tell voters who just demanded change, one of the biggest national political stories we've seen in a while. Republicans, you tell voters why you're against excellence in public education, why you're against the state cap fund, against property tax reform. You defend your position because voters have just told you where they want to go.
You don't think the D by your name is a hindrance in terms of being accepted in this state by voters and lawmakers whom you'd have to work with?
It certainly can be. I mean, let's be honest about it. It can be. I have to break through that. I have to prove to voters and communities across the state that this is a coalition willing to change. Now, two silver linings to that. Maybe I've done a dozen town halls, maybe a little bit more. We're going into red counties, and Republicans are turning out. We did a town hall in Pinellas, and I would bet that 30% of the room were Republicans. We have to win independents in a way that Democrats haven't won in the past. We have to go into red communities. Ultimately, though, here's the biggest opportunity for us. Governorship races are different. Voters behave a lot more rationally in governor races. It's almost like a big city mayor's race. It's not a presidential race. It's not a U.S. Senate race. It's how a Democrat, Andy Beshear, won in deep red Kentucky. How Steve Bullock, a Democrat, won in deep red Montana. That happens in governor's races. That's what's going to happen here in 26. This is the opportunity.
Where do you see the Democratic Party having to align itself politically? You know, do you stray away from the so-called woke politics, the ideological identity politics, and just focus on problem solving?
You know what? I've been all around the state. Democratic town halls, Republicans, independents. Nobody's asking about that. It's not a criticism for you whatsoever. It is a forecast of what's going to happen in this race.
You don't think that's what turned off people, though, in the presidential election leading up to it?
I think what happened is Republicans set the agenda and Democrats fought on the Republican playing field. And Democrats perhaps were not meeting voters where they were at. Our job is to unify a coalition. The singular issue in every conversation around the state, every town hall, every time, is the affordability crisis. Republicans gave you the affordability crisis. We want to provide relief. That's it.
David Jolly, thank you for your time.
Good to be with you.
Appreciate it.
You bet.
Full Circle Florida continues after this.